Throughout human history, there's nothing more universal in society than the theme of judgment. Whether it is a dispute in front of elders over livestock in ancient times, petitioning a noble at his court, or pitching an innovative idea to an executive boardroom, there is always a conflict between the currently accepted ideas and the new. This fight can either be a battle between radicalism and common sense, or between progress and prejudice. As David Mamet put it in the introduction, the drama this clan acts out is immemorial. The clan asks, "What shall we do with X?" And the elders reply, "Hold him here while we retire and deliberate." For over 60 years, 12 Angry Men has been an essential part of American culture. This play is a piece of good literature because it explores themes that are timeless and relevant to the modern world, as shown by its elements of literature, more specifically, its setting, plot development, and character archetypes. The play is set in 1954 at a New York court of law. A jury of 12 men have been forced from their daily lives and summoned to the court to decide the fate of someone they have never met before. One striking moment early on in the play highlighting the mood of captivity is when the fifth juror noticed that they were locked in.
I never knew they locked the door.
Sure they locked the door. What do you think?
I don't know, it just never occurred to me, that's all.
This finalized the fact that they are going to be stuck inside for the next few hours, fulfilling their duty in a plain, sparse room. The room has nothing but a desk, a couple chairs, a water cooler, and a bathroom, with only some windows and an exit door to be their contact with the outside world. This room seems way too small to contain the outbursts of the jurors, adding to the general feeling of claustrophobia and tension of the play. At the time period in which the play was set, America just emerged victorious from World War II and was in the middle of another conflict with the Soviet Union. During this, Jews were fleeing Europe and settling in America. American society was filled with distrust, fear, and panic in the midst of the Red Scare. They were looking out for communists hiding in shadows and immigrants sabotaging their society. 12 Angry Men showed the positive aspects of America, what made it great. And while the accused could have been Jewish given the time period the play was written in, there are no definite answers given to which social class he belonged to. The accused could have easily been black in modern times, giving 12 Angry Men a timeless quality to it. Plot development in 12 Angry Men is simple, to allow for the conflicts to happen clearly and to highlight themes relevant to when it was first released as well as now. The exposition is quick and straight to the point. A judge in the background explains why the jury has been convened and what responsibilities they have, setting the stakes. When they first vote, they uncover the initial incident. The eighth juror is the only one in support of not guilty. The rising action consists of the eighth juror slowly convincing the rest that the matter merits discussion and isn't just a fringe idea, that the idea of reasonable doubt is up for debate. After convincing half the jury comes the conclusion of Act 1 and the climax. At the climax, the third juror is outraged that people could ever believe such nonsense and gets provoked into lunging after the eighth juror, who stands his ground.
That's possible. Now listen to me, people. I've seen lots of dishonesty in my day, but this little display takes the cake. Tell him, will you? What's the matter with you people? The kid's guilty. He's got to burn. We're letting him slip through our fingers here.
Slip through our fingers? Who are you, his executioner?
I'm one of them.
Maybe you'd like to pull the switch.
For this kid, you bet I'd like to pull the switch.
Well, I'm sorry for you.
Don't start with
How
me.
it must feel to want to pull a switch.
Shut up.
You want this boy to die because you personally want it, not because of the facts.
Shut
You're a sadist.
Shut up! Oh,
After the climax, the rain falls, marking a break in the tension. Then, the falling action of convincing everyone who still holds doubts that the eighth juror is correct. The conclusion finally results in a 12-0 vote of acquittal, with them leaving the courthouse after having done their duty. This plot diagram accurately describes the struggle that those in similar situations to the eighth juror have faced when presenting their new ideas. They will first struggle for acceptance and try not to let the tension rise to a breaking point, showing why the audience should care about this new idea, then cutting away at prejudices. The jurors in this play come from different walks of life. They are the American melting pot. and the characters' motivations and pasts are clearly displayed and connected to the progress of deliberation. The protagonist is the eighth juror, who initially thinks that something may be off with the case, but just can't put his finger on it. Instead of ignoring his doubts and voting guilty with the rest of the jury, he becomes the sole dissenter. He couldn't send one person off to die without giving it some discussion. The eighth juror's insistence of it's possible that the accused may not be guilty is also a driving force behind his plea for more deliberation.
I'm not trying to make accept anything. I just say it's possible.
The main antagonist, on the other hand, shuts down all initial discussion, proclaiming the matter to be resolved. This antagonist is the third juror, who feels as if it's an open and shut case. Right after the initial vote, the third juror doubted that the eighth was serious about his conviction that the accused might be innocent, first asking if the eighth juror was just doing this for proper procedures of discussion.
You think he's not guilty?
Well, I don't know.
I never saw a guiltier man in my life. You sat right in the courtroom, heard the same thing we did. Man's a dangerous.
The third jurors focused less on figuring out the guilt or potential innocence of the accused, and more on bringing the accused to justice, carrying out the death sentence. The conflict the eighth juror faces is a combination of man versus society and man versus man. He deals with both the prejudices of the jury as a whole, disinterested and convicted in their beliefs, plus an additional conflict between him and the third juror. When bringing up new ideas, the eighth juror faces the same thing that all people in his situation face when presenting innovative or controversial ideas to a crowd. They first ask, why? Why should we care? What the eighth juror faces initially is apathy and disinterest. They are sure that the man is guilty, so why is the eighth juror halting this process? When the other jurors have other things to do, a baseball game for instance, and don't want to spend any more time than necessary in a cramped and hot room. At 12 Angry Men's most extreme, this thought can be highlighted by the 10th juror asking,
You know what the truth is? Look, I want to tell you another thing. They don't need any big reason to kill somebody either. They drink and they get into a fight and bang, somebody's lying in the gutter. Nobody can blame them because that's the way they are. Don't you see what I mean? They're violent. Human life doesn't mean as much to them as it does to us. Where are you going?
The eighth juror convinces the rest of the jurors to be more interested most effectively by appealing to their sense of duty and justice. In a last-ditch attempt to drive the conversation forward, Juror 8 gambles and calls for a poll to take place with him excluded. He wins the support of the 9th juror, who is the complete opposite of disinterest.
This gentleman chose not to stand alone against us. Well, that's his right. He left the responsibility entirely up to us. He gambled for support, and I gave it to him.
Most characters in the play are static. The only dynamic part about them is their acceptance of the evidence that points to not guilty. They are all convinced that the boy is not guilty differently, to their own standards of proof, and checking it with their own background. For example, Juror 5 stays sympathetic to the accused because he grew up in the slums. Juror 11 stays an advocate of free discussion because of his fondness with the American justice system. And Juror 10 stays a bigot, only growing disinterested in the verdict. The major dynamic change in character was in Juror 3, who first clung to the past to justify his conviction that the accused was guilty.
It's a kid. I got a kid. When he was 8 years old, he ran away from a fight. I saw him. I told him right out, I'm going to make a man out of you, or I'm going to bust him into little pieces, trying. And then when he was 15 years old, he hit me in the face. He's big, you know. Kids, you work your heart out. I haven't seen him in 3 years. Come on, let's get out of here.
At the end of the play, however, he lets go of the past and moves on, ripping apart the photo he had of his son after being reminded that the boy on trial was different. The most interesting part about these characters in the play is that they are unnamed and remain so throughout the entirety of the play. This is because the characters are archetypes that can be seen in today's society. The events laid out in the play are not unique to those characters. The conflicts enclosed are universal. In conclusion, the play 12 Angry Men touches upon many themes that are relevant to the modern world. Even if it has been written 60 years ago, it still carries the same weight as it did when it was first released. It touches on real-world issues such as the influence of prejudice in our decision-making, free discussion, duty, and justice.
Go home, folks.